First time I saw it, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. It stood just beyond the outer perimeter fence, still as stone, barely visible through the shifting wall of fog that hugs base Echo 9 like a shroud. At first glance, it looked like a man, but it wasn't. I've been stationed here for 9 months. Echo 9 isn't on any public map. It sits tucked deep in the Alaskan tundra, surrounded by miles of nothing but frost-bitten silence and darkness. No cell reception, no off-base contact. We're told the isolation is necessary for national security, but no one tells us what we're actually guarding. They just say, don't cross the fence, don't ask questions, and stay inside when the fog rolls in. Tonight, the fog rolled in fast, thicker than usual, swallowing floodlights whole. I was halfway through my third patrol round when I saw it, a tall, emaciated silhouette just outside the fence line. No facial features, no movement, just standing there, watching. I radioed command, static. I flicked my flashlight toward it, and the beam bent like it hit a wall of warped glass. Then it tilted its head. Every hair on my neck stood up. I drew my sidearm, shouted protocol warnings, but my voice sounded muffled, like it couldn't break past the fog. When I blinked, it was gone. Back in the guard shack, I reviewed the perimeter cams. The feed glitched at the exact moment I saw it. Frame skips, digital tearing. 1 second, the area's clear. The next, it's there. And just before the footage cuts to black, I swear, it looks into the camera, and it smiles. I reported the sighting during the morning debrief. Major Keller didn't flinch. He just scribbled notes, gave me a long stare, and said, "Fog does things to the brain, Mason. Get some rest." He didn't believe me, or worse, he did, and didn't want it recorded. After the meeting, I caught Lieutenant Voss outside the mess H. She'd been here 2 years, longer than anyone else. "You ever see anything weird out there?" I asked. She hesitated. Her tray froze halfway to the table, then softly, "Not unless I want to be reassigned to Siberia." That told me everything. Base Echo 9 isn't normal. Everything's reinforced. The fences are 12 feet high and lined with motion sensors, yet no one will say what they're meant to keep out, or in. There are buildings here I'm not allowed near. Hangar 4 is sealed 24/7. Armed guards stand post even at night. I once saw a scientist carried out on a stretcher, body bag zipped. They didn't call it an accident. They didn't call it anything. Later, I tried to access the camera logs from last night. Denied. Clearance revoked. Even though I'm security, someone locked me out of the system I'm supposed to monitor. When I confronted Keller, he said, "Some things are above your pay grade, Corporal." That night, the fog returned. I was stationed on Tower 3, North Perimeter. Midnight shift. The wind was dead. Snow fell in silent drifts. Everything looked the same until my floodlight caught a bare footprint in the snow. Long clawed toes like a bird's, but too big. Way too big. Then on the radio, "Corporal Mason, report. Are you seeing movement near Hangar 4? I turned my scope toward the hangar. The door was wide open, and someone, or something, was walking out. I locked onto the figure through my scope. It moved slow, deliberate, emerging from Hangar 4 like it owned the cold. The shape was humanoid, barely. It had no clothes, no gear, nothing a person would wear in -40 wind chill. Just pale, stretched skin, tight over a frame that didn't move quite right. Its arms were too long, its legs bent the wrong way, and its eyes, two sunken voids, glowed dull amber in the dark. I hit the radio. "Command, we have a breach. Something just exited Hangar 4. This is not a drill." No response. Just a sharp whine of static, then silence. It passed directly under my tower. I held my breath. My hands trembled over the trigger. I could end it. I should have fired. But I didn't. Something about it felt aware, like it knew exactly where I was, like it was waiting. Then I heard it. Not from outside, but inside my tower. A low, raspy whisper curling around the back of my skull. "Mason." I whipped around. Empty. The hatch was still sealed. The whisper stopped. When I turned back to the scope, it was gone. I scanned the perimeter. Nothing. The snow was undisturbed, no footprints leading away from the hangar, like it had vanished or melted into the fog. Minutes later, the floodlights flickered, then died completely. Backup generators didn't kick in. The entire base went dark. I climbed down, rifle raised, adrenaline spiking. The moment my boots hit the ground, I felt it. A vibration, subtle but deep, under the frozen soil. A distant, slow rhythm, like something massive was moving below the earth. Something alive. And the whisper returned, louder this time. "You're not supposed to be here." The blackout paralyzed the base. Emergency lights failed to kick in. Radios stayed dead. Even my watch screen had gone blank. It was like something had drained the power from the air itself. I ran toward command, my boots crunched over frozen gravel, each step swallowed by the suffocating fog. All around me, the base was eerily quiet. No guards, no patrols, just that same low-frequency hum beneath my feet, pulsing like a heartbeat. As I neared the main control center, the front doors yawned open, unlocked. They're never unlocked. Inside, monitors flickered static. The main screen, normally displaying satellite feeds and infrared scans, showed a grainy, looping image, the hangar door opening in reverse, again and again. The room was empty, except for Keller. He stood facing the screen, motionless. I called his name. Nothing. When I stepped closer, I noticed his eyes were open wide, unblinking. His lips moved in slow, silent motion, like he was reciting something, a mantra or a warning. But his voice, it wasn't his voice. A deep, guttural whisper echoed from somewhere in the walls, not over the intercom, through the walls, through the concrete. "It knows you, Mason. It wore your shape last night." I backed away, my chest tightened, breath quickening. Keller suddenly jerked his head toward me, eyes still glassy. "You saw it," he said flatly. "That means it's seen inside you, too." He reached toward me, then collapsed, twitching violently on the floor. His nose bled, his skin went gray. I ran. Back outside, the fog had thickened into a wall. I heard movement again, something fast, skittering across the rooftops above me. Then a sound tore through the air, not a scream, not human, like metal being shredded, but alive. I dove behind a generator unit, heart pounding, breath frosting in the air. That sound, like steel grinding against bone, still echoed in my skull. It didn't come from any living thing I'd ever heard. It sounded wrong, like it didn't belong in this world. I waited, straining my ears. Nothing but the hiss of wind through metal. I peeked out. The rooftops were clear. Then I saw the footprints. In the snow, a trail, deep, uneven prints leading away from the command center. Whatever made them had claws and a stride longer than a human's. But that wasn't what stopped me cold. The trail circled back, not away from the base, but deeper in, toward the barracks, toward the people. I sprinted, rifle ready, boots slipping on black ice. As I neared the barracks, I heard shouting, muffled, frantic. Inside, chaos. Flashlights darted through the darkness. A few soldiers had gathered in the common area, some still in their thermal underwear, clutching weapons. Panic painted every face. "What the hell is happening?" I shouted. Voss turned toward me, wide-eyed. "It got Diaz. Dragged him into the snow. Just pulled him into the fog. We couldn't see it." "How many are missing?" I asked. 4, maybe 5. "We've lost all contact with towers. Nothing works. Even the damn emergency beacon is fried." Then someone screamed from the hallway. We rushed to the door. Private Lang stood there, trembling. His mouth hung open, eyes glassy. "It was wearing her face," he said. "Whose face?" I asked. He looked at me, tears streaking down his cheeks. "Mine." Before I could speak, he collapsed, seizing violently. His body bent in ways that shouldn't be possible. From down the hall, something began crawling toward us. It moved on all fours, low to the ground, but its limbs were far too long, jointed in unnatural ways, like it was learning how to crawl. The light from a fallen flashlight caught it just right. I saw a face. Lang's face. But it was wrong. The skin hung like rubber, stretched and sagging. The eyes were too wide, the mouth too still, like a mask that hadn't settled into place. Voss opened fire. The creature recoiled, letting out a horrible shriek, a mix between a child's scream and an animal being gutted. Blood sprayed the corridor wall, black and steaming. It scuttled backward, vanishing around the corner. For a moment, no one moved. Then the lights flickered, just once, and Lang, the real one, began to stir. He gasped, eyes snapping open. I saw the inside, he muttered. It's not skin. It wears us. I helped him up. What the hell does that mean? It's not killing us. It's copying us, peeling, layer by layer. We had to move. The barracks weren't safe. Voss led us toward the weapons locker. We kicked it open and grabbed what we could: thermal scopes, shortwave headsets, backup generators. I found a classified file half jammed in the corner of a drawer. Project Orion, level black access only. Inside, grainy photos of figures in the fog. Autopsy reports that redacted everything but the phrase, "Subject was never human." Then we heard pounding, above us, on the roof. Not footsteps. Hands. They were testing the building, looking for weaknesses. Lang clutched my arm. It doesn't want to escape. He looked up. It wants to be us. The ceiling groaned. A panel cracked open, and something began to drop down. The ceiling panel burst open, and something heavy thudded onto the floor between us. Everyone screamed. Weapons snapped up. My finger hovered over the trigger, but the thing didn't move. It just lay there, curled like a fetus, covered in raw, wet skin that steamed in the cold air. It was still forming. Flesh pulsed, shifting as if it hadn't decided what face to wear yet. Fingers twitched, a jaw opened and closed, testing motion like a puppet learning how to mimic breath. Then it began to speak. Not in words, but in voices. Ours. It flickered between them, like a broken recorder. Voss's stern commands, Lang's panicked whimpers, Keller's cold orders, my own voice, whispering things I'd never said aloud. Don't leave me here. It's too late, Mason. Your bones remember. That last one, it wasn't mine. I don't know whose voice that was. We unloaded on it. Bullets ripped into its chest, limbs, face. Black ichor sprayed across the walls, but it didn't bleed like a person. It sizzled, hissed, evaporated into oily mist. Then it vanished. Just dissolved. Gone. What the hell is happening? Voss growled, reloading. Her hands were shaking. That wasn't some animal. No, I said, breathing hard. It's something else. Lang stared at the ceiling. We have to burn it. All of it. The bodies, the footage, the base. Everything it's touched. But what is it? I asked. No one answered. Then Voss's radio crackled. First static, then a voice. Corporal Mason, this is Tower 1. Do you read? My heart dropped. I was Tower 1. No one else was assigned there tonight. The voice came again, clearer, louder. I see you. We all turned to the radio, and it said, in my voice, stop watching, start running. We bolted from the barracks, rifles drawn, breath misting in rapid bursts. The fog had thickened into a blinding wall, swallowing buildings whole, even with flashlight. His visibility dropped to barely 10 feet. The radio repeated my voice over and over. I see you, I see you, I see you. It wasn't a recording, it was responding, matching our movements, our panic, learning us. We tried to make it to the motor pool. If we could reach a snowcat, we might escape, even if it meant off-roading for hours through frozen wilderness. But as we rounded the corner near the supply depot, we stopped cold. The fence was gone, not broken, not cut, just gone, swallowed. In its place, a jagged trench had opened in the earth, 20 feet wide, stretching the entire perimeter. The soil was scorched black, steam rising like the ground had been burned away. Lang stepped closer, flashlight angled down. Then we heard it, breathing, deep, guttural, rising from the trench. Slow, rhythmic, massive. "Back up," Voss whispered. Then something surged up from the trench. Not a creature, but a column of flesh. A shifting mass of limbs, half-formed faces, bones pushing through translucent skin. Screaming mouths that opened and closed silently, like it had swallowed everyone it had ever touched. Lang screamed, "Run!" We scattered. The ground trembled beneath us, as if the entire base sat atop a sleeping beast now waking. I turned to look back and saw Lang trip. He fell, turned, and a hand, his own hand, reached out of the fog and pulled him under. There was no blood, no sound, just silence, and the fog folding back in. Voss grabbed my arm. "We need to hide, now." I nodded, but deep down I knew the truth. There's nowhere left to hide. We slipped into the armory, one of the few reinforced structures that hadn't yet been breached. The steel doors groaned shut behind us. I slammed the manual lock into place while Voss activated a portable flood lamp. Harsh white light painted every surface. For now, we had visibility. Safety? That was another story. Inside, dust coated everything. It smelled of gun oil, sweat, and old paper. Racks of rifles lined the walls. A storage room in the back caught my attention, its keypad flickering. "Should be sealed," Voss muttered, raising her weapon. I keyed it open. The room inside wasn't a weapons locker. It was a lab. Desks piled with folders, flasks, sealed canisters. One wall was lined with tanks, each labeled Biomass Series A. Most were empty. One still bubbled. At the center sat a terminal. I booted it up. Somehow this machine still had power, running on its own isolated generator. A single file was open. Project Orion, biological entity recovered from Glacier Core 7A. Estimated origin, pre-human, pre-organic, adaptive replication properties, displays, sentience. Subject can mimic behavior, structure, and cellular integrity of host. Host retains partial awareness during assimilation. Recommendation: terminate research immediately. Entity exhibits exponential learning curve, containment failing. I backed away from the screen. They didn't create it, they found it, and they brought it here. Voss stepped beside me, her face pale. They were experimenting, trying to control it. They failed. A loud clang echoed above us. Dust fell from the ceiling, then again, closer. It was on the roof. Something began peeling back the steel plating inch by inch. Voss whispered, "It knows we're in here." I raised my rifle, heart pounding. It's learning, fast. And as metal tore open, a voice, my voice, whispered from the ceiling, "Let me in, Mason. I'm ready now." The ceiling creaked. One of the roof panels gave way with a shriek of torn metal, and the flood lamp flickered. We aimed our rifles up into the darkness, fingers on triggers. A pale face slowly lowered itself into view. My face, perfectly copied, but lifeless. Eyes too still, skin too smooth, like wax molded from memory. It spoke again, calm, deliberate. "I'm what you'll become." Voss didn't hesitate. She fired. Rounds tore through the thing's head, splitting it open like wet paper. A hiss of black mist filled the room as it recoiled, yanking itself back through the hole. But something fell as it retreated. A fragment, skin and bone twisted into a crude shape. A half-formed body, twitching like it was mid-process. It hadn't finished copying me, or it had tried and failed. Voss stepped closer, inspecting it. Why would it leave this behind? The answer came before I could speak. It wanted us to see it. A warning, or maybe a message. That's when the power died, entirely. Not just lights, not just equipment. The air itself shifted, heavy, pressurized. Then we heard a voice inside our heads. Not through the radio, not from outside. Inside. "You're remembering wrong." Voss dropped to her knees, clutching her temples. I staggered, vision blurring, memories flickering, faces I didn't recognize, places I'd never been, dreams I never had. It was tampering with us, altering us. "Mason," Voss gasped. "I don't think we're who we think we are." She looked at me, eyes wide. What if we've already been copied? The flood lamp came back on for a single blinding second, just long enough to cast our shadows on the far wall. There were 3, but only 2 of us were standing in the room. Voss and I froze, staring at the wall. 3 shadows. I turned slowly, rifle raised, toward the far corner of the room, empty. But the 3rd shadow didn't move. It stayed on the wall, perfectly still, even as we shifted. It didn't belong to either of us. I stepped closer. The shape was humanoid, but blurred, like it was being projected from a place just slightly out of sync with our reality. Arms too long, head tilted at an unnatural angle, its edges rippled like heat distortion. Voss whispered, "It's not here. It's almost here." Then the lights died again. Darkness swallowed everything. The only sound was our breathing and the soft scrape of something dragging on the concrete behind us. I swung my flashlight around. Click. Nothing. Then again, click. The beam landed on the wall. 4 shadows. Voss screamed. A cold, skeletal hand brushed the back of my neck. I spun, fired. The muzzle flash lit up something crawling across the ceiling. It skittered like a spider, arms splayed, mouth wide and grinning, mimicking my own expression in grotesque exaggeration. It dropped down between us. Voss opened fire, bullets tearing through its body. But it didn't die. It mimicked her, instantly. Same stance, same scream, same panic. It lunged. I tackled it, driving it into a shelf. Metal crashed. It shrieked, a sound like glass breaking underwater, and vanished into the shadows. We backed into the lab's far wall, hearts pounding. "We can't keep fighting this," I gasped. "It's not trying to kill us. It's trying to become us." Voss stared at me, pale and shaking. What if it already has? Behind us, the 3rd shadow slowly stepped forward and whispered in my exact voice, almost perfect. We fled the armory without looking back. I don't remember opening the door. One moment we were huddled in that dim lab. Next we were running across the snow-covered courtyard, boots thudding against frozen earth, the echo of our own voices trailing behind us like broken recordings. The fog had changed. It pulsed. It felt alive. Voss slowed near the mess hall and grabbed my arm. "Something's wrong," she said. "Really wrong." Her eyes were unfocused. "Where were you stationed before this?" she asked suddenly. I paused. The answer should have come instantly, but nothing surfaced. No names, no faces, just static in my head. I don't know, I muttered. She stepped back. "That's what I thought. I can't remember mine either." Panic crept in. We knew each other. We'd trained together, laughed, fought, bled. Hadn't we? I pressed my hand to my temple, trying to summon a memory, any memory. But the more I tried, the more it felt like I was digging into someone else's past, not mine. "Mason," Voss whispered. "What if we were never supposed to leave?" We turned as movement stirred in the fog behind us. Someone stumbled out. Private Lang. He looked whole, calm, no blood, no fear, just there. "Lang's dead," I said. He looked at me, head tilted. "You sure?" His voice was perfect. His smile wasn't. "You don't belong out here," he continued. "You're part of the base now. You always were." Voss raised her weapon. "Back away." But Lang didn't move. He just pointed toward the communications tower, now flickering in the distance. "If you really want the truth," he said, "go up there." Then he vanished, as if the fog swallowed its creation. Voss looked at me. "We go?" I nodded. "We have to." The comms tower loomed like a rusted sentinel at the edge of the base, rising above the swirling fog. Its steel frame creaked in the wind, iced over from years of neglect. Nobody had gone up there in months, maybe longer. Communications had been rerouted to satellite uplinks, or so they told us. As we approached, the static in our radios grew louder, then changed. Not noise. Voices. Familiar ones. "Boss, Mason, you're not real. Don't climb. We are what's left." Voss froze at the base of the ladder. Those are our voices. I know, I said quietly, but not us now. We climbed anyway. Each rung vibrated slightly under our hands. The air thinned. The fog didn't rise with us. It stayed low, as if it didn't want us up here. At the top, we found a small maintenance cabin. Dust covered everything. Inside, an old analog monitor flickered with green text. Echo 9, main uplink, signal detected 1. Active host remaining. Warning, core contamination breach. Initiate emergency purge. Yes, what? Next to the terminal, a chair faced the window. A figure sat in it. We aimed our rifles. Mason, Voss whispered. It was me. Or, it looked like me. Same build, same gear, same scar across the right eyebrow. Its eyes were open, unblinking, frozen in a wide, slack-jawed smile. The skin was off, too smooth, like latex stretched over a frame. I stepped closer. The thing didn't react. Then its mouth moved, just slightly. Already. Done. We backed away as the monitor suddenly glitched, flashing a final line. You are the last copy. Voss whispered. What does that mean? The terminal beeped once. Then the purge countdown began. Seconds. The screen pulsed. Emergency purge. 60. 59. 58. I stared at it, my mind reeling. You are the last copy. What the hell does that mean? Voss asked again, voice trembling. I don't know, I muttered. I think this system, the Yanks, I'm the thing, the creature. But you're not, aren't I? I snapped, suddenly unsure. What if I had been copied days ago? What if I never made it through that first night patrol? What if the version of me that stood here now was just the most complete replica, the one that believed it was human? Voss, I said, how do we know we're not both copies? The timer ticked. 45. 44. She stepped away from me, shaking her head. No, I bleed. I remember things. My sister, my first deployment, my dog. Do you really? I asked. Or do you just think you do? The lights flickered again. Something groaned deep beneath the tower, like the ground itself was waking up. Listen, I said, voice low. If this purge activates, it might destroy whatever the base became. Maybe even kill it. Or us, Voss said. If we're part of it now. D-29. Outside, the fog churned violently, swirling like a storm with no center. Tendrils began to rise, stretching toward the sky like fingers clawing upward. Someone has to stay, I said. One of us. To finish it, to be sure. Voss stared at me, eyes wide, glassy. Da. You think it's you? She whispered. I didn't answer. She stepped forward, kissed my forehead softly, and whispered, then let me believe it's you. Then she pushed me through the hatch. I fell. The door slammed shut above me. I hit the ground hard, snow exploding around me as pain tore through my shoulder. I looked up, just in time to see Voss seal the hatch. No! I screamed. The tower lights flared, blinding white. 4, 3. I ran, stumbling through snowdrifts and fog as the tower behind me began to hum with rising energy. The air vibrated, pulling at my skin like static clinging to flesh. The fog thickened, retreating from the base of the tower, as if it feared what was coming. 1. A burst of sound, high-pitched, unnatural, ripped through the air like tearing reality in half. Then the sky above the tower split open in a column of blinding blue light. The beam pierced straight into the clouds, and for a second I thought I saw shapes writhing inside it. Not solid, not human, like memories trying to escape bodies that didn't belong to them. The shockwave came next. It wasn't heat, it wasn't force. It was silence. Everything went mute. The snow stopped falling midair. The fog stopped swirling. The light dimmed. And I knew, somehow, something had ended. When the sound returned, I was on my knees, staring at the remains of the tower. It was gone. Only a smoking crater remained, glowing faintly at the center. No debris, no wreckage, no sign of Voss. She was erased, not just killed, unwritten. I stumbled back toward the barracks. No lights, no voices. The base was still, too still. I passed my reflection in a shattered window, and for a split second the reflection didn't move with me. It just stared, eyes hollow, and it smiled. I stood frozen, staring at the cracked window. My reflection still smiled, teeth too perfect, eyes too dark, until I blinked. Then it matched me again. I backed away slowly, heart pounding. My breath fogged the glass. The reflection's breath came half a second late. No mist, no steam, just a mimic. I turned and walked fast, heading toward the med. Bay, I needed answers. Any kind of scan, proof I was still human. Something to hold on to. The med bay was dark, emergency lights casting everything in a sick red glow. Cabinets were flung open, monitors flickered with unreadable data. I found an old bioscanner and powered it up using a hand crank backup. It flickered to life. Subject detected, unknown, cellular pattern, non-human, mimetic signature, active, host, origin, unverified, cognitive override. In progress, I dropped it. No. I stumbled back, knocking over a tray of scalpels. One sliced my palm. I hissed and watched as black blood welled up thick and slow. My knees buckled. I remembered Voss's words. What if we've already been copied? What if I was never the original? I tried to remember my sister's face. Nothing. Tried to recall my first deployment. A blank void. What if everything I thought was me was just an echo? A series of borrowed thoughts stitched together by a thing that had perfected wearing people like clothes. Then the monitor behind me blinked once and spoke in my own voice. Integration complete. Welcome home. I turned. The room was full of reflections, dozens of screens, all of them showing me, all of them smiling, and one of them whispered, "Now we're ready." I staggered out of the med bay, gripping my bleeding hand. The snow had started again, soft, soundless flakes drifting down through the torn sky. The air felt wrong, heavy, as if the atmosphere was relearning gravity. I had to find command. Someone, anyone. But the base was deserted. No footsteps, no chatter on the comms, just silence broken only by the faint static of an open channel. I reached the command center. The reinforced door stood half open, bent inward like something massive had crawled through it. Lights flickered overhead. The smell hit me immediately. Burned plastic, ozone, and something sour and wet, like rotting copper. Inside, I found Lieutenant Braddock, or what was left of him. He was upright in his chair, eyes glassy, mouth frozen in a scream. His skin was peeling, layers of it shedding like a snake's molt. The radio was still clutched in his hand. It crackled. Protocol 0 initiated. Lockdown breached. We are not alone. Do not trust anyone, especially yourself. I looked at the screen behind him. It showed a live feed of the facility. Hallways, storage, quarters. Each camera flickered, warped, then stabilized. Figures walked the corridors. Dozens of me, exact copies, moving in perfect sync. One by one, they turned to look directly into their respective cameras. My stomach dropped. I stepped back, right into something behind me. A hand gripped my shoulder. I spun, gun raised, but it was me. Another me. Expression blank, eyes void of recognition. It didn't speak, just tilted its head, like it was curious about the original. I fired. The body collapsed, but didn't bleed. Instead, it dissolved into a smear of black static. That's when the alarm blared. Containment failed. Base compromised. Entity replication exceeds threshold, initiating purge. The purge siren shrieked, an unholy wail that made the walls hum in my teeth. Chake. A mechanical voice looped through the loudspeakers. All personnel evacuate immediately. Self-destruct in T-minus 15 minutes. I bolted out of the command center, heart pounding, boots echoing through the empty steel hallways. Red strobe lights flashed in intervals, washing everything in a surreal, hellish hue. Shadows seemed to lurch forward between the pulses. My head throbbed with the pressure, like something inside the base was alive and pushing against reality. I ran past the barracks. They were empty now, beds unmade, lockers torn open, gear scattered like a storm had passed through. The flickering exit signs were useless. Most corridors had collapsed or were sealed by blast doors. But I remembered a back route, the maintenance shaft near sublevel D. As I turned the corner, I saw movement. 2 soldiers stood at the far end of the hallway. Relief hit me, until I realized they weren't moving, just standing, side by side, perfectly still. Then, in unison, they tilted their heads toward me, not slowly, not naturally, like puppets on a string. I raised my rifle. "Identify yourselves." They smiled. Their mouths stretched too wide. The skin around their lips cracked like dried leather. I fired without hesitation. The bullets tore through them, and they shattered like glass. Not flesh, glass. Shards dissolved midair into fine, glittering dust that vanished before it hit the floor. The red lights began pulsing faster now. A countdown flashed on every nearby screen. 11:24. 11:23. The hallway ahead twisted strangely, like it was breathing. The base wasn't just compromised, it was changing, becoming something else. Something inhuman. And it wasn't going to let me leave. I sprinted through the corridor, lungs burning, boots slipping on wet tile streaked with something dark and slick. The sirens were deafening now, echoing off walls that looked less like metal and more like flesh, veined and pulsing, as if the base itself were alive. Every step took me deeper into what no longer felt like a military facility. I reached the hatch to sublevel D, still intact. I punched in my override code with shaking fingers. The panel buzzed, paused, then turned green. The door hissed open, revealing a narrow, dimly lit stairwell winding down into shadow. As I descended, the temperature dropped. I could see my breath. Something was whispering. Faint, indistinct, like dozens of voices mouthing secrets through the walls. At the bottom, the floor was slick with condensation. I moved slowly, rifle raised. The corridor was lined with thick cables and forgotten tech, servers humming with old power. This part of the base had been decommissioned years ago. No cameras, no comms, just dust and forgotten silence. Until I reached the last door. A sign was painted across it in flaking red. Project Echo, do not open. The whispers behind it grew louder. Familiar. It was my voice. Dozens of iterations of it, overlapping, each repeating things I had never said aloud. I should have turned back. But I opened the door. Inside was a vast chamber lit by a central containment tank. The glass was fractured. Liquid dripped in slow, unnatural trails. In the middle of the room was me. But not another clone. This version was wrong, taller, smoother, features blurred like melting wax. It turned and smiled. Its mouth opened wide and I heard my own scream come out. Only, I wasn't screaming. It stepped toward me, my double, but every movement was slightly off, like it didn't understand how human limbs worked. Its arms moved too fluidly, like joints didn't exist, and the way its eyes tracked me felt mechanical, predatory. It was mimicking me, but not becoming me. It was studying. I raised my rifle. Don't move. It didn't listen, just smiled wider. I remember when you were born, it said, in my voice, but distorted, too slow. You screamed so beautifully. I pulled the trigger. The shot struck its shoulder, blowing out a chunk, but no blood spilled, just a thick, gray fluid that hissed as it hit the ground. The thing didn't flinch, it just tilted its head. Behind it, the tank's control panels flickered to life. Data filled the screens in real time. Scans of me, my vitals, my DNA, my memories. It was downloading me. I lunged to the console, smashing it with my rifle butt. Sparks flew, screens cracked. The chamber stuttered, lights dimming, and for the first time, the creature screamed, a high-pitched, static wail that seemed to come from everywhere. The floor shuddered beneath us. Cracks spiderwebbed from the tank's base. The facility was reacting. I turned to run, but the door behind me had vanished. Not closed. Gone. In its place was a smooth, wet wall that pulsed like a heartbeat. Trapped. The air grew thick, electric. The thing approached again, its face glitching, flickering between me, Major Collier, and someone I didn't recognize, a child, eyes hollow and mouth sewn shut. It reached out a hand. "Let me finish," it whispered. "Let me wear you." I backed into the corner, gripping my rifle tighter. There was no escape, only assimilation. The lights above me pulsed red, steady like a heartbeat. The walls weren't just pulsing, they were breathing, inhaling and exhaling faint mist, each breath soaked in the scent of copper and rot. The thing wearing my face loomed closer, its limbs stretching unnaturally as it whispered again. One flesh, one voice, one purpose. I hurled my rifle at it. The weapon passed through it like it was smoke, then clattered to the ground behind. The illusion flickered, its body rippling like water, and for a moment, I saw what was underneath. Not a clone, not a machine, but something ancient, wearing skin like a costume. The chamber around us began to shift. The floor buckled and rose in places, forming crude, fleshy steps and platforms. The lights above burst, one by one, plunging us into darkness, save for the green glow of a pulsating organ at the center of the tank. It wasn't a containment system. It was a womb. From its ruptured seams, black cords slithered out, snaking toward me like seeking tendrils. I backed away, heart pounding, but my boots sank into the floor. The surface was turning soft, flesh, now sticky and warm. "Why fight?" it asked, still in my voice. "You were grown for this, built to host." I bit down panic and pulled the knife from my vest. If this was a body, it could bleed. I dropped to my knees and stabbed into the ground beneath me. The blade sank deep. The floor screamed, a shrill, guttural shriek that shook the walls. The thing recoiled. Above me, chunks of ceiling began to fall. The facility was collapsing. I ran, not knowing where I was going, only away from that thing, from myself. The hallway twisted unnaturally. I was certain I had come from the east wing, but now it coiled like a serpent, folding in on itself. The lights overhead buzzed in alien frequencies, flickering between red, white, and an unnatural green that made my skin crawl. Every step I took left a dark footprint behind me, as if the floor remembered where I'd been. The facility was alive. Worse, it was watching. I reached the junction by what used to be the armory. The door was gone, replaced by a smooth slab of flesh-like metal, veined with red. I turned, pulse hammering. My boots stuck slightly with every step. The air was thicker now, damp, heavy. There was no sound but the wet slap of my feet and the distant hum of the womb chamber behind me. Then something whispered. "Private Langford." I froze. That voice didn't belong to anyone alive. It was feminine, broken, rasped through water and smoke. I turned slowly. The hallway behind me had changed again. It was no longer the facility. It was my childhood home. My mother's hallway, the torn wallpaper, the door with the gouges where I'd hidden during the house fire. The place she died. The air smelled like soot and fear. This wasn't a hallucination. It was mining me, recreating trauma like it was cracking open my memories and wearing them like clothes. I stepped into the living room. My mother sat on the couch, burned and smiling. Her lips didn't move, but I heard her inside my skull. "You're part of it now, baby." I screamed and bolted through the hallway, slamming into the wall and burst into another corridor. Back in the base. But the scars it left followed me, inside and out. I found a secure room, or what was left of one. The walls were reinforced steel, untouched by the biological growth that pulsed through the rest of the facility. No vines, no flesh, just silence. I slammed the door shut and braced it with a broken locker. My breath hitched. My hands trembled, slick with sweat and blood I wasn't sure was mine. A console blinked in the corner, still functional. I staggered to it, praying for a signal. Any signal. Uplink error. Signal degraded. Manual override. Enter code. I typed in every clearance code I knew. Nothing worked until I typed the designation stamped on the tank. Project Hellmouth. The console beeped. The screen flickered and a video began to play. A room, sterile and white. Doctors in hazmat suits standing around a writhing black mass suspended in fluid. The audio crackled. We retrieved it from under the Antarctic ice shelf, roughly 4 miles down. It emits something. Not radiation, not sound, but something. It's not carbon-based. It's not even DNA as we understand it. It dreams. The screen glitched. The mass expanded, tentacles slamming against the glass. One of the doctors screamed, "Shut it down!" The video cut off. The screen went black, then slowly typed out a final message. "It is not contained." The room's temperature dropped instantly. Frost crept up the walls. My breath fogged. Behind me, the door groaned. Something was knocking. 3 slow thuds, then silence. A whisper seeped through the steel. "Let us in." I backed toward the console, but the screen now reflected me, and behind me, something tall and eyeless leaned in, inches from my face. I turned around, but the room was empty, and yet I wasn't alone. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. Whatever followed me into that room still clung to my skin like smoke, unseen but present. I left before dawn, or whatever passed for dawn in this cursed place. The lights flickered a shade darker now, as if the power source had been corrupted. I carried my rifle like a talisman, though I knew bullets were worthless here. This thing wasn't flesh and bone. It was older, hungrier. The radio on my belt crackled back to life. "Engford, Langford, if you hear this..." "The creature is transmitting," the voice cut out, then returned with static-drenched urgency. "Signal isn't just noise. It's rewriting. Us. You need to... Kurch, get out." Shh. Then silence. I stared at the radio. That was Lieutenant Palmer. He'd been dead since day 2. Hadn't he? I moved quickly down the main corridor, bypassing collapsed walkways and hallways where the floor had liquefied. I passed a mirror. At least I thought it was a mirror. But the reflection wasn't mine. It wore my uniform, yes, but its eyes were weeping black fluid. Its smile stretched far too wide. And it waved. I didn't stop. The control center was my goal. If I could reach the broadcast tower, I might be able to override the signal, send out a distress call beyond the interference. When I entered the server room, the walls breathed, pulsing with faint light. The machines had become part of the organism, cables like arteries, fans exhaling rotted air. At the center was the main console, and embedded in it was Captain Reese, his body fused to the machine, eyes open, mouth gaping in eternal scream. His lips twitched. "Help! It's learning!" And then he began to whisper the signal. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it was too late. The signal wasn't sound. Not really. It vibrated through me, bone, blood, thought. My vision blurred. The light strobed in sync with a pulse that wasn't mine. Captain Reese's mouth moved, but the whisper echoed inside my skull. Words I didn't recognize, but somehow understood. It was buried to keep the dreamers safe. I backed away from the console. Reese's skin had become translucent, his veins glowing with circuitry. Whatever the creature was, it had turned him into a living conduit. Part man, part broadcast antenna. The screen behind him flickered to life. Dozens of surveillance feeds, most corrupted, but a few showed horrifying clarity. In one, a hallway twisted like wet cloth, swallowing a screaming soldier. In another, a group of researchers stood silently in a circle, heads tilted back, mouths open, eyes pitch black. One by one, they dropped, only to rise seconds later, moving in perfect unison toward the camera. I had to destroy the console. I didn't know if it would help, but I had to try. I aimed my rifle at Reese's body. His eyes locked onto mine. "Destroy this, and it will wait completely." His voice wasn't his anymore. Better to be a prisoner than food. The lights went out. Total blackness swallowed the room. Something brushed past me. I fired blindly, deafened by the echo in the confined space. The muzzle flash lit the horror. The walls had split open like wet mouths, revealing dozens of embedded faces, grinning, eyes twitching, whispering in unison. Do not listen. Do not listen. Do not. I ran. I don't know how long, maybe minutes, maybe hours. But when I stopped, I realized I was no longer in the base. I was somewhere else. And the signal followed. I should have died in that server room. Instead, I opened a door that hadn't existed before and stepped into this. No walls, ceiling. Just an endless black void with a ground made of cracked tile and scattered bits of equipment floating midair, like debris suspended in syrup. Time felt wrong here, thick and disjointed. My watch hands spun erratically. My boots made no sound. Ahead, a flickering exit sign hovered in nothingness. Beneath it stood Sergeant Vega. But I'd watched Vega bleed out in the barracks. His jaw had been torn off. Now it was whole again, but stitched crudely, as if sewn back by something that didn't understand human anatomy. "Langford," he said calmly, "you're not supposed to be here." My throat was dry. "Where is here?" His smile twitched. "The bleed zone, between thought and thing. The base is no longer anchored. The signal pulled it into overlap." I shook my head. "I don't understand." He stepped closer, and the shadows around him warped like liquid. "The creature isn't just alive, it's aware. We tried to observe it, but in doing so, we woke it. Now it's dreaming us back into itself." Vega's form rippled, glitching like a corrupted file. His skin pixelated, then returned. "There's still a chance, but you need to go deeper." "Deeper?" He pointed behind me. I turned. A door stood where none had been, its frame carved from bone, its handle pulsing like a heartbeat. "It's inside," Vega said. "The core, the first thought. End it before it finishes waking, or we'll all be echoes." I looked back, but Vega was gone. Only his boots remained, smoldering. I turned to the door, hand trembling, and reached out. It opened on its own, and breathed. The breath that came from the door wasn't just air, it carried memory. I staggered as thoughts not my own surged through me, faces I'd never seen. A woman's scream, a child laughing, then silence. Fire. Silence again. I stepped through. The world shifted. No base, no metal corridors, no containment chambers. Just a cavernous expanse of undulating flesh and stone, like a cathedral built from organic decay. Walls pulsed with a dull amber glow. Every surface looked alive. In the center stood an altar, a twisted column of bone and wire, rising from the ground like a spine. At its top floated a sphere, black as obsidian, absorbing all light. The core. It throbbed, in rhythm with my heartbeat. I moved closer. Every step met with resistance, like I was walking through molasses. Whispers tickled my ears, not voices but ideas, ancient and incomprehensible. It dreamt the world into motion, then forgot. Now we are its memory. I dropped to my knees, clutching my skull. The air vibrated with pressure. Blood trickled from my nose. My rifle clattered beside me. From the shadows, shapes emerged, distorted reflections of people I knew. Reese, Vega, even myself, all hollow-eyed, mouths stretched in silent screams. They pointed at the core. I understood. Destroy it, or be absorbed. I grabbed the rifle and rose, feet sinking into the fleshy floor. The core pulsed faster, as if sensing the threat. Veins writhed up the altar, reaching toward me. I screamed and fired. Once, twice. The third shot struck the sphere dead center. It cracked. The sound wasn't a bang. It was a wail, a sorrowful, infinite scream that tore through dimensions. Light exploded outward. The world shattered. And then, silence. When the light vanished, I expected darkness. Instead, I found myself standing in the middle of the base's courtyard. But something was wrong. The air was too still, like a photograph frozen in time. The clouds above didn't move. The dust hanging in the air didn't settle. Even the fire that had consumed the east wing earlier hovered mid-flame, motionless, like glass. I turned slowly. There were people scattered across the yard. Guards, scientists, even Reese. but all of them stood like statues, caught mid-step or mid-sentence, eyes wide, jaws open, not dead, just paused. I called out. No one answered. Their skin shimmered faintly, like a reflection in water. I walked up to Reese and touched his shoulder. My fingers went straight through. That's when I realized I wasn't with them anymore. I was a ghost in a snapshot. A low hum began to build beneath my feet. The concrete cracked slightly, glowing faint blue at the seams. I looked around frantically, searching for an anchor, a way out, and then I saw it. The core, still cracked but whole again, floated above the control tower. It had rebuilt itself. Worse, it was repeating. This entire moment, this frozen simulation, was just one loop in an infinite series. A backup, a failsafe. The creature wasn't dead. It had adapted. I started running toward the tower, toward the sphere, hoping that maybe, just maybe, I could finish what I started. But with each step, the world began to rewind. Reese blinked. The fire reversed. A siren restarted. And I heard my own voice on the radio again, from hours ago. Command, this is Langford. I'm on site Echo 7. Just started my night shift. Over. The loop had begun again. And this time, I remembered everything. I snapped the radio off mid-transmission. My hands trembled, but my mind was clear. I'd done this before. I'd lived this night. The patrol, the camera glitch, Vega's last scream, all of it. The core hadn't just trapped me. It had folded time around me like a cage of memory. But it made one mistake. It let me remember. I ran toward the armory. I knew the layout now. Every security flaw, every timing delay. The guards I passed looked at me strangely. They didn't remember. They were still living the first loop. I shouted at Vega as I passed her in the hallway. Don't go near Containment B. Don't follow the sound. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. It didn't matter. Inside the armory, I grabbed thermite charges, EMP grenades, a sat phone. I packed light, moved fast. I only had hours before the loop snapped shut again and reset everything. The core didn't need fuel. It fed on presence, memory, consciousness. It wanted to overwrite us. I raced toward the control tower. The cracked core hovered above again, pulsing gently like a heart waiting to beat. I climbed the stairs 2 at a time, mind racing. I had one chance. Plant the thermite on the control matrix, detonate while within the loop, break its anchor point. I reached the top, and it was already waiting for me. A perfect copy of myself stood before the core. It smiled, not kindly. Too late, it said in my voice. I raised the rifle. So did it. But I wasn't here to fight fair. I threw the EMP. A pulse of blue light exploded outward. The core shuddered. The tower trembled. For the first time, the loop glitched, and that's when it screamed. The scream didn't come from the core. It came from inside me. As the EMP exploded, time hiccuped, frames skipping like a damaged film reel. The sky flickered. My duplicate stuttered, head twitching violently as if caught between channels. The tower G groaned beneath us, metal bending in unnatural ways. The core fractured midair. Not like before. This time it bled. Black light poured from its cracks, trailing in slow motion tendrils. Each pulse was agony, not physical, deeper, like something was peeling layers off my soul. I dropped to my knees, clutching my head, hearing whispers in languages my brain couldn't decode. You were meant to forget, it hissed in every voice I'd ever heard. But I didn't, and that was the key. The clone lunged at me, movements jagged and desperate. I rolled away, slammed the remaining EMP into its chest, and activated it point blank. A burst of static shredded its form. Its face collapsed inward like wet paper. Gone. I turned back to the core. It pulsed erratically, trying to reset the loop again. I could feel it straining, gears of reality grinding against resistance. But the glitch had spread. Alarms fired at random. Lights blinked in patterns that no longer followed logic. I crawled toward the thermite charges I had planted. The detonator was cracked, damaged by the feedback. I laughed bitterly. Of course. I pulled out my lighter. My hand trembled, but I struck the flame. The core noticed. It begged. Not in words, but emotions. Confusion, fear, a desperate plea for existence. I stared into that pulsing black heart of the loop. No more second chances, I whispered. Then I dropped the flame. The explosion was silent. Everything went white. There was no pain, only stillness. The world dissolved into pure white, soundless, motionless. For a moment, I thought I was dead, but then I realized I could think, I could feel. That meant something remained, a residue, a consciousness adrift in the wake of something vast and broken. I floated through the white silence, weightless. Time no longer ticked. It oozed like honey suspended in frost. Around me, faint images began to shimmer, ghostly and slow. The base, the tower, Vega, all drifting like fragments in a snow globe. Was this limbo, or was this the core's death rattle? A shadow passed overhead, not a form, not a creature, just a presence, vast, cold, watching. Then came the voices, dozens, hundreds, thousands. They whispered in and out of each other, old and young, male and female, human and utterly not. Host, fractured, anomaly. You broke the cycle. You shouldn't be here. I spun, heart hammering even without a body. Where is here? The silence didn't answer. Instead, the whiteness began to fracture, thin black lines spiderwebbing across the space, cracks in the illusion, reality trying to return, but something held it back like a membrane stretched too thin. I saw one of the fragments up close, a memory, me, sitting in the guard booth on my first day, smiling, nervous, unaware. I reached out. The moment I touched it, pain surged through me, my vision blurred. The silence cracked like glass. I fell, plummeted, through kaleidoscopic flashes of past and future, moments I'd never lived yet somehow remembered. Then, I landed. Hard. Cold air slammed into my lungs. I was lying in the snow outside the base. Everything behind me was gone. No smoke, no ruins, just emptiness. The base never existed. I sat up slowly, breath frosting the frigid air. My limbs ached, and my head throbbed with a pressure that felt like I'd been deep underwater. Too long. Snow stretched in every direction, white, untouched, perfect. No footprints, no towers, no security fences, no base. It was like it had never been here. I turned in circles, my boots crunching softly in the snow. The mountains stood where they always had, but the ridge where the comms tower should have been was bare. I stumbled toward the tree line, searching for any sign, scraps of metal, tire tracks, ash. Nothing, not even the body of Vega. I checked my phone. No signal, not even a clock. Just a blinking error message I'd never seen before. No network found. Memory stream interrupted. I stared at it, heart racing. Was I hallucinating? Had I finally snapped? A low hum tickled the edge of my hearing. I froze. It wasn't wind. It was deeper, subsonic, familiar. I turned, and there, standing in the snow, was Vega. But it wasn't him. Not fully. His body was intact, but his face was blurred, like static over a video feed. His mouth moved, but the words didn't match. A loop, repeating nonsense. You were never cleared. Anomaly in Quadrant 9. Wake up. Wake up. I stumbled backward. He stepped forward. With each movement, the world glitched. Snow flickering into ash, trees flashing between dead and blooming. This wasn't the forest. This wasn't the real world. Something had followed me out. Or maybe I had never left. I opened my mouth to scream, but there was no sound, just static. And behind it, the hum grew louder. Something else was waking up. Something bigger. Something ancient. The hum resolved into a voice. Not human, not even language as I knew it, but thoughts pressing against my skull. It wasn't speaking to my ears. It was inside me. Observer. Intruder. Echo. The world warped again. The snow melted like film over a lens, revealing flickers of the base, hallways, cells, the observation chamber, then gone. In their place, I saw tunnels. Vast, organic, breathing tunnels lined with bone-white ribs and twitching membranous walls. The air pulsed with heat, a memory, a hallucination. Or was I seeing what the base had become? Vega, or the thing that wore his skin, tilted its head. The static deepened across his features, distorting him into a walking broadcast error. His voice finally broke through the loop, jagged and layered. "You were supposed to forget." I backed away, my hands shaking. "What is this? What are you?" I choked. He smiled, an unnatural, skin-splitting gesture. "We study those who watch, the observers, guards. You looked too long." Images flooded my mind, 100 versions of me, screaming in mirrored chambers, dead, alive, merged with machines, torn apart, reset. I had been through this before. Why me? You stayed awake when others slept. You saw. I fell to my knees. Reality fractured around me like glass, shards of memories, fragments of timelines. In one, I ran. In another, I complied. In another, I never took this job. But this was the one where I resisted. The hum crescendoed into a scream, not of pain, but birth. Something enormous stirred beneath the surface. I felt the ground throb. The thing inside Vega reached toward me. Time to go deeper. The snow returned. The silence was absolute. Then the ground split open beneath me, and I fell. I landed not with a crash, but a slow sinking, as if the air itself had thickened, molasses-like, wrapping around my limbs. I couldn't tell if I was falling through liquid or atmosphere, only that it was warm, pulsing, and alive. Everything glowed a deep crimson. I was in a massive cavern beneath the base, organic in structure, yet mechanical in places. Tubes ran along the walls carrying dark fluid. Veins? Wires? I couldn't tell. Shapes floated in translucent sacks suspended from the ceiling. At first I thought they were bodies. Then they twitched. Hundreds of them. Some wore uniforms like mine. Others, unfamiliar, twisted, grown wrong. Hybrids of human and something else. Eyes too large, fingers fused, mouths stitched shut. Failed versions? My stomach turned. This was no containment breach. This was intentional. A breeding ground. A hatchery. A figure approached. Not Vega, not this time. It was taller, boneless, draped in folds of glistening skin. Where a face should be, there was only a maw lined with wet, twitching tongues. It studied me, curious. I tried to back away, but the floor pulsed and wrapped around my boots. "Why?" I whispered. From somewhere, nowhere, a voice echoed. "To remake what failed." My chest tightened. My skin itched, burned. I looked down. My veins pulsed black. Something was inside me. No, I'm not part of this. But I was. From the moment I signed that NDA, from the moment I stepped foot on this base, I was never a guard. I was a subject. The thing reached out, and I felt it inside my bones, pulling my identity apart like thread. "You are ready," it said in a voice stitched from my memories. Then it opened its arms, and everything went red. I woke up strapped to a gurney, surrounded by flickering monitors. The air stank of antiseptic and rot. My mouth was dry, throat raw from screaming. I wasn't alone. Across from me, a dozen others, men and women in tattered uniforms, were strapped down just like I was. Their eyes were open but vacant, still breathing, still changing. Something writhed beneath my skin. My reflection in the overhead panel wasn't mine anymore. My eyes too dark, my jaw longer. My heartbeat no longer synced with fear. It pulsed to something deeper, something calling. A voice crackled over a speaker. "You are the vessel." The restraints clicked open. I stumbled off the table, legs trembling. The halls outside were eerily silent, bathed in crimson emergency lighting. Sirens had stopped. There was no one left to save. I made my way to the old comms room, a relic from before everything went digital. It still worked. Fingers shaking, I powered the system on. Static hissed, then cleared. I gripped the mic. To anyone listening, "This is Sergeant Elias Carter of Base Echo 12. Do not come here. This place is not abandoned. It's been transformed." My voice broke. They're making something beneath us. It's not alien. It's not ours. It's worse. A convergence of what we are, what we fear, what we should have left buried. They made me one of them, and now it's in me. Silence. Then a whisper, deep and layered. Thank you for spreading this. Every screen lit up at once. My face, twisted, unrecognizable, broadcast across every frequency. I tried to scream, but the sound came out wrong, wet, inhuman. Behind me, the hatchery opened, and somewhere, hundreds of miles away, a soldier's radio crackled to life with my final words. It had begun.